Welcome all to the book review of the day, which is for Philip Jose Farmer's Dayworld Rebel. I've got this rather beautiful little edition here with its wraparound cover, and this gorgeous cover illustration is by Chris Foss, I do believe. I'm not sure where I got that information from. And yeah, Dayworld Rebel is the second in Philip Jose Farmer's series, which began with Dayworld. I read Dayworld last year in April. I feel like it was April. So it's taken me about a year to get to the second one. And honestly, for me, that worked really, really well. I'm not sure how it'll work for other people. If you like binging on a series, it might be worth your while going from the first straight on to the second. This is going to be a spoiler light review. I'm going to say what's happening in the series and in the book, but I don't think it'll really ruin anything for you. So, in Dayworld Rebel was published in 1988. Dayworld came out in 1985, I believe. So this is a mid to late 80s series, and I think that's no longer what I'd exactly call classic science fiction and fantasy, but it is very much a classic SFF author in Philip Jose Farmer. So the central concept in the whole Dayworld series is that humanity have progressed to the notion that a dystopian style future in which people are allowed to live only one day of the week. I believe that this is based on a short story by Philip Jose Farmer called The Sliced Crossway Only on Tuesday World, which is one hell of a mouthful. I don't know much more about that. Though it's probably here in the front of the book, and I should have checked before hitting play. No, it isn't here in the front of the book. Okay, whatever. But this is a concept that I think a lot of authors around about this era were into. I can't remember if it was a Philip Jose Farmer or Ron Goulart that did a very interesting one with Jack of all trades, in which an apartment was shared between the day shift and the night shift, so there was only ever one couple or one person in the apartment at the time. But the dystopian effects of overcrowding there were a feature, and here they're a completely different feature. So in this world that Philip Jose Farmer dreamed up, it revolves around stoning. So a new technology has allowed all the molecules in anything organic to be slowed down to the point where they are like stone. They're impenetrable, they're solid, invulnerable to a certain extent, but they're preserved forever. So you may have, if you've got a one-bedroom apartment, you will have 7 people sharing it, and in one room there'll be this series of coffins. In my mind, they're a bit like Egyptian mummies' coffins with faceplates so you can see who's inside. And every night, just before midnight, alarms go off, and the person who has lived that day gets in and is stoned until they awaken in the following week. As a consequence, you've got this exceptionally regulated society, and I remembered a lot of it. Now, Dayworld has as its main protagonist a name named Jeff Cade. He's a daybreaker. What he's done is he's established 7 different personas, and he skips from one to the other. Every night he gets into his capsule, but then gets back out again and moves on to the next persona. And he's got some interesting psychological traits that enable him to compartmentalize. So he's not just pretending to be Jeff Cade, not just pretending to be one of his other personas. He actually is. He's thoroughly invested in it, to the point where the ubiquitous truth sprays, if given to him, he will only reveal that persona that he is at the time. So there's a lot there. Dayworld Rebel was a book that I enjoyed a lot. I gave it 5 stars. It was very much thriller, fast-paced. Bird? No. Okay. Fast-paced, and it was a lot of fun. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I also enjoyed Dayworld Rebel. I probably not quite a 5-star, probably a 4-star for me. I think the book didn't hold together quite as well. 5, 6, 7, 8. It was 3 years between the first one and this third. I'll be back. Cluck. Hi. It was about several years between the two, and I feel that Dayworld Rebel, it's called Long Awaited on the cover, but I feel like Philip Jose Farmer had ideas and he was enjoying them, but I don't think he had quite the same commitment that he had when he was writing the first one. Nevertheless, it is still a very good one. Because it had been a year since I'd read the first one, I remembered that our main protagonist was called Jeff Cade, and I remembered some of the things that happened to him in a vague way. And that works really well, because Dayworld Rebel starts with where he's in this sort of psychiatric prison. He's being psychoanalyzed on a regular basis because they're trying to uncover how exactly he can lie under tooth spray, and they're trying to get something out of him about his previous personas, but he doesn't know what. So he invents a persona called Duncan to account for his world. We all know he's Jeff Cade. Some of the law enforcers know he's Jeff Cade, but he himself thinks of himself as Duncan. And even later, right at the end of the book, when he learns who he is, that's our main protagonist. Now, with the tiny bits of information about his old personas that leak through into his mind, Duncan, or Jeff, if you will, we'll go with Duncan, manages to escape this prison that no one has ever escaped from. He escapes from the city using knowledge he's privy to from his other personas, and then he flees into one of the woods. They're not exactly woods, they're more like forest preserves. We're told that the population of the world is 8 billion, which is just funny because we're already there. We're not having to live one day of a week. That would probably be better for the forest if we were. He escapes, he hooks up with the whole rebel cadre that are living in the woods. They are, all of them daybreakers, none of them get stoned for 6 days of the week. That'll never not be funny. And he hangs around with them for quite a while. Now, while that's happening, you get quite a lot of interesting plot and things happening. But I do feel that at that point, Philip Jose Farmer went a little bit off the rails, like he didn't quite know where the story was going. There's a little bit of repetition, but there's some great scenes in there as well. These rebels live mostly underground, and you've got some good characters like the Padre, and eventually they are discovered by the chase that is looking for Duncan. He doesn't know why he's that important at that point, and I don't either, because I've forgotten a lot of what I read a year ago. And we have this chase. One of the characters from the first one, Snick, she's called, Panthea Snick, who is an organic or policeman who is searching for him. She comes back and is in there as well. They go from there, they're given fake personas, they get on a train to LA. This is not our LA, this is 2 LAs in the future. The first one, I think, drowned, and another one was bombed into non-existence. And now there's another one, which is basically these massive towers that you live in almost exclusively. If you're a fan of some of the Silverberg books, that sort of tower complex will be very familiar to you and pretty good. So, leading on to the end of the book, which is an end of a story arc, but quite clearly waiting for the 3rd book in the series, which is Dayworld Breakup, which was published in 1990. I do not own Breakup. I may never know the end of the Dayworld trilogy. That's very sad. But I will look for it. Hopefully I can find it in the next year, and then I'll read it when the Dayworlds are still fresh in my memory. Because they're great. They really are very good books in a lot of ways. The writing feels very contemporary. Yes, I know the 80s isn't classic SFF, but it still feels It hasn't dated as much as a lot of 80s writing had, and I enjoyed that. It feels contemporary without having the contemporary tendency to not really explore and speculate as much as some of the older fiction does, which is why I like older classic science fiction and fantasy. Okay, there was something that Philip Jose Farmer did here that he does in other books that I did really enjoy. Brings in random information that interests him. So one of the characters here that our rebels meet when they're on the train to LA is obsessed with ants. My Mercia? My Mercite, I can't remember. Whatever the family name is. And he lectures on and on about ants, and he himself resembles an ant a little bit and has a habit of moving his fingers as if they are antennae. So that was a great character. I'm guessing that Farmer was either interested in ants or became briefly interested in ants in the 80s, but that was very enjoyable. Around page 78 or 79, the leader of the rebels embarks on this long monologue, discourse, soliloquy, I don't know what it was, about how people in power should always be distrusted and how would we know if they were lying. Now he's talking about the truth spray, and the results of the truth spray, not tooth spray, which have been advertised, but it actually feels remarkably prescient. So that was fun. And oh yes, another point, one of these other debates that I thought was entertaining is where our protagonist is talking about how unnatural this style of life is. Well, duh. But the point he's making about it is that people in the olden days, like us, would sleep all night long in peaceful joy, but they have to sleep in increments of 4 hours at a time before they get stoned for the night, or maybe when they first wake up in the morning, and it's unnatural. And that's interesting because in the 80s people very much did believe in the 7 or 8 hours sleep. You go to bed, you sleep through, etc., etc. These days the prevailing belief is that that was not the ancestral way of sleeping at all, that people would go lie down for a while, get up at night and do a few things and then go back to bed. Anyhow, it's just an interesting notion on how these various theories of history and humanity evolve and change over time. Now, world building isn't really what he's going for here in a big way. The world has already been built, now we're playing in it. But he does give us a extensive bit of history around page 139, and it does come out as a little bit of an info dump, though it's portrayed as Duncan asleep, thinking of the history, which is a nightmare, and which his nightmare is all about the history. It talks about World War III, weirdness, alternative reality. So this is what you would call an alternative reality. I'm not sure that I remember what date it's set in, but it is futuristic. Still, we're talking about a World War III that would have already happened, a whole heap of events that didn't happen, how in the early 21st century gunpowder and rocket fuel started failing and could no longer be used in wars. I don't get how that happened. Maybe it was in the first book, I don't remember. Steam power failed as well. There's a whole heap of weirdness. It was pretty good. There is a few other things. Apparently, Jose Farmer was interested in the play Peer Gynt by Ibsen, which I had forgotten about Ibsen completely, or about that play, which I now would really like to see, or possibly, if I have to, read. So, sparkling examples of futuristic science. So the stoning, which the whole world revolves around, it's completely eliminated the problem in feeding the masses and food distribution, because as soon as you pick that luscious, ripe peach, you stone it and then it's shipped for wherever. It can wait for years. All you need to do is have this little de-stoning device and you can bite into the peach or put it in the microwave. Microwaves are big in this book. So with this stoning technology, you've got two sets of time. So you talk about subjective time, which to me, as a subjective Wednesday liver, a month would be 4 days. 3 or 4 days, depending on the month. Whereas the objective time would be a whole month. So you've got sub time and ob time. And I quite like that. It made for good background. One of the things that does build a world and make it feel real. Another thing that was interesting to me was that our protagonist, Duncan, his job is the same job that he had in one of his earlier personas in the book Dayworld, which is basically a data assimilator and analyzer. He works on computers, gets a whole heap of statistics and information, correlates them and saves them. Now that is so mundane these days, humans don't even do it, computers do it for themselves. But in the 80s, this was still heavily speculative, and I really liked the way it's written and how they used it within the book. So this is very political in tone, very critical of authoritarian paternalistic government. It's very anti-Big Brother style government. And if you've got a speculation, the speculation here is that you should not be trusting people in power, which I feel is also pretty prescient and entirely appropriate to the world we live in today. I'm going to end on a quote. It's page 227, apparently. So, as I mentioned, one of the things that I didn't like about this was that the world building wasn't always supreme. It did feel like Philip Jose Farmer had set up the world and we were just having another adventure in it. It was fast-paced thrillery, but not as fast-paced as Dayworld, and didn't hang together as well. It felt as if he wasn't quite sure what he was trying to do or where he was trying to get to. The ending was a little bit drawn out and a tiny bit anticlimactic, because we're not really going to see the climax of that ending until the third book, which I don't have, so I may never know. Another thing that I really didn't much care for is that Philip Jose Farmer brings back a character Snick, or Panthea Snick, from the first one. She was not a character I liked then. I still don't like her. I don't see why Philip Jose Farmer adores her as much as he does. Duncan being in love with her seems very insta-love and strangely forgotten throughout the plot. It seems almost meaningless. Maybe it's going to get somewhere in the third book, but in the first book it was just plain annoying, and in the second book it could have been anyone. It didn't have to be Snick. I don't see why it was. But Philip Jose Farmer tells us that he's in love with her. Can't see it myself. I'm not convinced. But Duncan, or Jeff Cade, tells us that apparently largely because she's got hair that looks like slick seal hair. I don't know. That's a bit weird. Anyhow, on page 227, you've got a beautiful quote. He's just told her that she's important to him. She tells him that she isn't interested. And he says, "I know from my own experience and those of others that I will get over it. I may carry the pain in me as I would an encysted tuberculosis bacterium." I mean, Philip Jose Farmer comparing unrequited love to an encysted tuberculosis bacterium. How good? How good is that? I really can't go past that. So thank you, Philip Jose Farmer, for quite a few days of very pleasant reading. I do hope one day I will find Dayworld Breakup, read that one, review that one, and then review them as a series. In the meantime, read good books.